Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we're finally talking about the Hollywood darling Anne Hathaway. This actress turned activist has been spouting off about SJW bullshit for a while now, and recently it's all come to a head this week, as Hathaway was honored with a National Ally for Equality award. And we already know most Hollywood award shows are just excuses for these losers to dress up and jerk each other off, but winning an Ally for Equality award from the Human Rights Campaign, that really sounds like it takes the cake to me. Hathaway also followed up this award with a pretty cringy and self-important acceptance speech, which we'll get to soon. But first, let's turn back to about a month ago, when this recent wave of virtue signaling from Anne Hathaway started. Here's a quote from an Instagram post she made around this time. It really had some heads turning, to say the least. Check this out. It says, "White people, including me, including you, must take into the marrow of our privileged bones the truth that all black people fear for their lives daily in America, and have done so for generations." Lots of capitalized letters there. And, well, I hate to break it to you, Anne, but it's actually quite the contrary. I don't think a single black person in the history of America has ever feared for their lives daily, every day. And yeah, I'm pretty damn sure about this. And this isn't just true now, in the present, it's also true throughout our history. Blacks in the civil rights movement still had days off on the weekends to drink, get high, and go to parties in the hood. Lots of drugs and sex back in the 60s. And also, have you ever heard of American jazz, which was created by mostly black people in the South and Louisiana and St. Louis particularly? Well, a lot of those jazz musicians sounded pretty happy to me, often. And jazz began in the late 1890s, reaching its prime around the 1920s. Hell, we could go even further back. Even the slaves had days off, you know. And haven't you ever heard any of those happy-go-lucky slave songs? Lord gon' pick a bale of cotton. Something like that. So yeah, I'm pretty sure you can't say every black person throughout all of American history has feared for their lives. Certainly not every day. I mean, assuming you mean every day. And frankly, I don't know what this bimbo Anne Hathaway is talking about, but I'm pretty sure there are plenty of black people who don't fit into this horrendous and insulting stereotype Hathaway has adopted here. Does the left not realize how goddamn demeaning this is? They group every single black person into the same victimized group, like they're all helpless children. It's really patronizing. And I know I wouldn't want to go along with this if I was black or brown, so it's no wonder why so many people of color are turning Republican these days, because we like to treat minorities like human beings. And Anne Hathaway's comments here certainly sparked a bit of backlash, and she was also met with just as much or more praise and commendation, which brings us back to the more recent award Hathaway received, which was surely related to her virtue signaling about a month ago. For more details on this recent part of the story, let's turn to an article from Hello Giggles called "Anne Hathaway Called Out Her White Straight Privilege." And this is important. I'm sure it's really not important, but let's see what these leftist wackos have to say anyway. Check this out. As award season gets underway with the 70th Primetime Emmy Awards on Monday, September 17th, Ocean's 8 actress Anne Hathaway received a different kind of accolade at the 22nd Annual Human Rights Campaign National Dinner on September 16th. The Oscar winner was honored with the HRC National Ally for Equality Award in recognition of her LGBTQ activism. Through her incredible talent and bold activism, Anne Hathaway uses her global platform to stand up for the LGBTQ community. HRC President Chad Griffin said at the event, "From speaking out against discriminatory legislation targeting the LGBTQ community to her leadership on workplace equality for women, Anne is making a real difference in the lives of countless people around the globe." In a tearful acceptance speech, Hathaway spoke about the importance of dismantling the myths of straight and white privilege, something she acknowledged she benefits from. Alright, well, I beg to differ on a lot of points here. First of all, award season is already starting in September? Aren't the Oscars in like January or February? Jesus, it's like the Hollywood award season is half the year now. Get over yourselves. And secondly, Anne Hathaway doesn't have straight white privilege. She's got pretty girl privilege, and there's a big difference. You see, straight white privilege, well, that doesn't exist. White privilege is just a way for leftists and SJWs to shame white people for their skin color, and it's because they're jealous of our strength and success, and they're also racist. I mean, think about it. Saying someone has white privilege is just a low-key attack on white people. It's anti-white racism, which apparently Anne Hathaway has bought into, hook, line, and sinker. That's why she's hating on herself publicly here. She's basically cucking herself to the social justice warriors, and she really shouldn't. It's okay to be white, if you hadn't heard, and it's also okay to be a pretty girl with privilege too. So don't get me wrong, I'm not doubting Anne Hathaway is very privileged. It's just not because she's white and straight. Like I said before, she has pretty girl privilege, and probably rich people privilege too. From what I've read, her parents were already pretty well off before Anne went on to get rich from acting. Regardless though, Anne is privileged. That much is obvious. Pretty girls do tend to get spoiled, and they always get what they want in this day and age. And being rich on top of that helps a lot too. But being straight and white doesn't really factor into this equation for me. The way I see it is, leftist assholes are telling people their other privileges are white privilege in order to further carry out their anti-white agendas. It's pretty similar to the attacks on the Jewish Jewish people, if you think about it. They're often criticized for being privileged too, and rich and influential, and they group together on top of that. So the Jews, like the whites, they're both openly hated against because people blame their success on their skin color or their religious background, instead of recognizing the hard work and dedication these groups have exhibited for generations in order to bring their people up to where they are today. It's important to acknowledge, with the exception of not being a cisgender male, everything about how I was born has put me at the current center of a damaging and widely accepted myth, Anne Hathaway said. That myth is that gayness orbits around straightness, transgender orbits around cisgender, and that all races orbit around whiteness. Hathaway noted the importance of her relationship with her brother, who is a gay man, as well as her relationships with other members of the LGBTQ community. I appreciate this community because together we are not going to just question this myth, we're going to destroy it, Hathaway told the audience. Let's tear this world apart and build a better one. Alright, well, I have to say, I don't know what the F she's talking about anymore. Gay, trans, and minority rights are constantly being thrown in everyone's faces everywhere today. Preferential treatment for them is carved into everything we see, and it never ends. You gotta be blind not to see that, Anne. If anything, straights and whites are the ones being ostracized today. We're the ones who are told we have privilege, and we should feel guilty for our skin color. If you can't see this big, glaring, in-your-face hypocrisy, I just can't help you, Hathaway. And I think it's also worth noting how specific these left-wing people are with their charity and activism. They're not charitable towards people with illnesses and people that are dying with cancer or something. No, they help out minorities and gay people, who are very, very small subsections of our society. And they're also not injured or dying or homeless or starving. You see, the LGBTQ community only makes up less than 4% of the United States. That means only about 3.8 out of every 100 people are gay, lesbian, trans, or bi. And those are the only people Anne Hathaway and this award show care about. Not the sick, dying, poor, or homeless, or orphan babies. No, they just care about minorities and gay people. And they're not just called minorities for no reason. They're called minorities because they're the minority groups in our country. And sure, these people needed help back in the day, but we're well past the civil rights era, and gay rights are also pretty secure and even by now. What's really going on here is these minority groups don't want to give up their victim status, because with that comes lots of, what? Yes, privilege, you guessed it. And that's why these minorities pretend they're still oppressed too. And it's also why they pretend white people have privilege. They're projecting to us. Really, they have the privilege, and their response is to accuse others of being guilty of what they're guilty of. A classic leftist tactic, rooted in projection. But before we get too sidetracked here, let's now turn back to Anne Hathaway and take a look at some clips from her smug, holier-than-thou speech she gave a few days ago.
Ladies. Gentlemen. Gentle them.
Gotta get them pronouns right. Great start, Anne. You've really come a long way since the Princess Diaries. Believe it or not, Anne Hathaway used to be a pretty, young, full of life, comedic actress. Princess Diaries had a lot of good laughs in it, but now, Anne has turned super serious. She's matured, won her Oscar and other awards, so she's decided to become an entitled, smug, and wannabe activist too to go along with it. What a joke. These Hollywood crackpots need to get a grip already. You're not changing the world, Anne. You're dressing up in skimpy outfits and reading lines in front of lights and cameras. Lines which you didn't write. So I don't know what about that and what makes all these celebs think they're experts on social issues all of a sudden, but it happens more times than I can count.
You guys, you keep rewarding me for things I don't think need rewarding. I am just living the values my parents gave me. I'm loving you the way you deserve. And yes, I am giving major side-eye to anyone that thinks differently.
That's code for anyone who disagrees with liberal SJW dogma gets chastised and publicly humiliated. Hell, you don't even have to disagree. If you just remain neutral and don't care, the leftists will still come after you, because anyone who doesn't kiss the asses of gays and minorities is a racist bigot, according to them.
In this note, Ella thanked me for my courage as an ally. Ella, sweetie, I want to make something absolutely clear to you. It takes zero courage to love you.
Are you sure about that, Anne? We don't know. This Ella kid you're talking about could be annoying and terrible and impossible to love. And I don't like this assumption that all trans and gay and lesbian people are perfect little angels with no flaws whatsoever. Because not only is that completely false, it's also usually followed up with the reverse. Not only do left-wingers like Anne think every LGBTQ person is perfect and flawless, they also believe if you're not one of them, you're automatically flawed and imperfect. Because when you idolize the minority groups to this extent, it's natural to vilify the majority groups. That's why we get ideas like white privilege and white guilt anyway. It's because they're assuming the white majority, what small white majority we have left, well, they think whites are docked points for being the bigger group, whose privilege and should have guilt. But I think that's straight up bullshit and sounds like left-wing nonsense to me.
I love the dignity that accompanies self-acceptance, and the way our collective humanity gets expanded when one wrongfully marginalized community says, "We are human beings. There is enough room here for all of us, period."
Wow, a lot of buzzwords in that one, Anne. I'm not even sure what you're talking about again. And I'm a pretty smart guy too, so this is on you. I guess maybe she thought if she threw out compliments to these LGBTQRS people, if she threw them enough compliments, they would just go along with whatever she said. And they basically are, especially since she called them marginalized, which of course is much healthier than being butteralized. But really, what does marginalized even mean here? Sounds to me like someone is pushing people into the margins, trying to hide or get rid of them. And if that's the case, no one is marginalizing LGBTQ people. It's actually quite the opposite. As I said before, gay, lesbian, and trans stuff is being pushed almost everywhere in Western society right now. It's in the news, TV, movies, music, you name it. And it's being pushed in all the Western countries too. So when these lefties try and pretend these groups are still oppressed and persecuted and marginalized, I just have to laugh. You're overplaying your hand here, guys. The SJWs are really pushing the boundaries and it's starting to backfire on them. In the end, Anne Hathaway has exhibited some of the worst, most self-important virtue signaling I've seen in a long while. Her smugness levels are really getting up there, and I think all these awards and self-congratulations are hardly well earned. Anne is a pretty good actress, sure, and I don't even mind her getting an Oscar in 2013 for Les Mis, but this ego-driven, left-wing fueled, pro-SJW nonsense really needs to stop. Hathaway has really overreached here. She's not some kind of human rights, social justice warrior activist, and she's certainly not doing her race and her people any favors by pushing straight white privilege narratives, privileges which don't exist. As I said before, what Anne really has is pretty rich girl privilege, and it's really as simple as that. What do you guys think? Is Anne Hathaway still hot? Should she be claiming that she has straight white privilege? Does that even exist? And what do you think about her saying all black people live in fear every day? If that's true, they sure do hide their fear pretty well. I saw a black bum sleeping with his dog in a parking lot a few days ago, and he looked pretty relaxed and chill to me. Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. See y'all next time.